Today's interview with Kyle McDermott was outstanding. Kyle is such a genuine, authentic person. He's the author of the best-selling book, Begin with We. And I just related to him because he spent 20 plus years in corporate America before he realized he had a bigger calling outside of the corporations. And that was to help the corporations improve their culture, help leaders improve their skill set, and really become leaders instead of bosses. He's packed full of wisdom and learning nuggets, and I just thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I know you will too. And remember, if you own a brick and mortar health or wellness business or a fitness business, and you're looking to generate more leads, create more value, and close more memberships, check out ThriveMore.ai. ThriveMore.ai, and you can book an appointment on there to see how we can help you generate more leads, get those leads through the front door, and change more lives. Enjoy the podcast. On today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Kyle McDowell, a former Fortune 10 executive turned inspirational speaker, best-selling author, and leadership coach. Kyle is on a quest to create cultures of excellence and reignite leaders' passion and their purpose. With nearly 3 decades of experience leading tens of thousands of employees at some of America's biggest firms, the biggest of the biggest, McDowell's philosophy is rooted in his trademark principles, the 10 W's. And while today's workforce is plagued with uncertainty and apathy and high turnover, his strategy is simple. You begin with we. I've read his best-selling Wall Street Journal and USA Today, Begin with We book, and it delves into the root causes of business dysfunction, and it offers a remedy through the 10 W's in the framework. So he is a prestigious keynote speaker. He works with nonprofits, universities, of course, still some major businesses, and he's been featured in all kinds of periodicals, including the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and Inc. magazine. You are going to enjoy this guy. I had a few minutes to talk with him before we went live, and he's a great dude. So Kyle, with that, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Hey, Roger, man, it is really great to be here with you today. Thank you for the opportunity. I've been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too. For those of you watching on YouTube, you can see me holding up the book, Begin with We. For those of you on Spotify or Apple or other places where you listen to your podcast, you need to check this book out. It is called Begin with We. We'll put it in the show notes so that you can click on it. But lots of great nuggets that are based on his experience, not theory. This is not a professor writing a book. That's based on theory. This is on actual experience from when he was in corporate America. Kyle, before we get into that, I just want to go back just a hair. You and I share a background of working in Fortune 50, Fortune 10, Fortune 500 companies, in the corporate grind. And now you help others level up their culture. And before we went on camera, we talked just a little bit about the average, corporate America culture. How did you start to make this pivot? So you're in corporate America, super successful, and you decide to pivot. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I would tell you, I've had 2 chapters of my career, and the first chapter lasted about 20 years. So I started from a very humble place. I was with a regional bank right out of high school, paid my way through my undergrad. I think the cubicle was probably no larger than a bathroom stall, and managed to kind of work my way up the ladder, and use the word success. And I think by most measurements, I was, pretty successful guy. I found myself at that time leading about 3,000 employees. And I reached this point, Roger, where as my career blossomed and I took on bigger scope and, had bigger roles with larger teams, bigger P&Ls, the only thing that matched the increase of those things was the level of apathy that I was experiencing. I'd had great results, but the question I should have been asking, and one that just never occurred to me, was at what cost? I looked around at about year 22, 23. I looked around and I had the apathy was so strong, it was palpable. So I thought, well, let me just lean into some colleagues that I know that I trust and they trust me. And what I heard was disturbing. And it was, we really are more fearful of you, Kyle, than we are respectful of you. And In hindsight, now I know why, because I was raised in this corporate world where banging the fist on the desk, raising the voice, results at all costs, got a sick kid, don't care, I'll see you on Saturday, those
Sure.
types of
Sure.
approaches. And I found out that I was, instead of enabling and growing folks around me and investing my energy into their development, I was alienating them. And I got to a point, Roger, where my health was not good. I was on the doorstep of a divorce, which ultimately came to be reality. And I knew, instead of asking the question at what cost, the question I started to ask was, is there a better way? And I reached the point where I had to get out. I had to leave the corporate world. I was fairly lucky in that I was able to kind of put a little bit of cash away, and I was going to sit on the bench for a few weeks, if not a couple of months. But I made a promise to myself, if I were going to go back into that fray, leading a massive or large organization, I was going to do it differently. I was going to lead in a way that I had never led, because I had the recipe for results, but I didn't have the recipe for fulfillment. So when I exited, I made this promise to myself, and I thought, well, okay, if I sit on the bench for a couple of months, I'll get my head together, get this divorce taken care of, and I'll come back stronger than ever. But I didn't even know what that meant. I was out of work about 11 days, and I got a call that said, hey, would you be interested in joining our team to lead about 14,000 people? It was a $7 billion program. And my first response was, sounds great, but I need to understand what's happening. What's going on in this organization behind the curtain? And it occurred to me early on, the gentleman who was responsible for doing the hiring, my boss, I wouldn't say he was checked out, but he wasn't as engaged as I would have liked. But I saw that as an opportunity for me to put my stamp on things and not have someone looking over my shoulder. So I took the role, and I brought a healthy amount of optimism with me, and I knew I needed to do things differently, but I didn't know exactly what. So about 60 days into the role, I had what I now refer to as my epiphany moment. I brought the top 40 or 50 leaders of this my newly inherited organization into one place. We were in Lawrence, Kansas. And it would be my first chance to kind of set the table, my expectations of them. But that evening, the night before, it occurred to me, they should also understand how and what to expect from me. So it's about midnight that evening. I'm in my not so nice hotel room, and I thought, man, I got to put something together. I didn't have any slides. I didn't know exactly what I was going to say. If I'm being honest, I was terrified. I really didn't know where the conversation would go, but I knew, based on what I had heard and observed the first 60 days or so, that there was a fair amount of sandbox mentality, right? We had this functional area over here doing really, really well, another functional area not performing so well. But if you ask the former, they would say, yeah, we're winning. But on the macro, we weren't winning. The team wasn't winning. We had lots of high performers, but not high performing teams, and certainly no sense of camaraderie or I got you. There was none of that.
Yeah.
So that evening, man, I'm in my hotel room, and I thought, well, I just got to put a few slides together. And I didn't have a plan. There was no muse on my shoulder, but what I ended up with a couple hours later was just 10 sentences. And each of those sentences did, and they still do, begin with the word we. And I'm not that creative. So these 10 sentences became the 10 we's. The next morning, I shared them with the team, and it's safe to say the transformation that was launched the very next day, not for everybody, because there was a fair amount of skepticism,
Sure. Sure.
was nothing short of profound. And from there, it's blossomed into something that I never anticipated. If you would have told me back in 2017, when all this started to kind of come to life, that I'd be on a podcast chatting with you about my USA Today and Wall Street Journal best-selling book and my journey to get to this point, I would have laughed at you. But it's turned my passion, which is people, into my purpose. And that's where Begin With We comes in, because I know now that there is a better way. You don't have to bang your fist on a desk. When you invest time, energy, and care into those around you, the results will come. So I stopped focusing on the results and started focusing on the people and watched the results climb. But the only thing more profound than that was watching bosses transform into leaders, like really human-centric leaders. And that's been the mission since the book came out a couple of years ago now. And now I find myself on bigger and bigger stages and more important and a wider reach of podcasts like yours. It's what fuels me.
Thank you for sharing that, Kyle. It reminds me of, it parallels my personal journey.
Yeah.
I want to go back just a half a step, because we have listeners that are in corporate America, so desperately want to leave because they are unhappy.
Yeah.
And I found myself after 25 years in the pharmaceutical industry making what would be considered a lot of money, just flat out a lot of money. And I do want to challenge one thing you said. You said I was fortunate to have been able to put away some money. No, you planned and you lived beneath your means to put away that money. So I want everyone to hear that and let that stick. That you don't just get lucky and you have extra money. You plan to have extra money because you live beneath your means. But I found I was trapped in this, but I'm making such great money.
Those
I
handcuffs.
they're handcuffs, and I
Yeah.
get off a plane. There's somebody with a sign waiting for me. My hotel is taken
Ooh.
care. Like it just was so. But I was miserable, but absolutely miserable. Like you said, it was apathetic, and I didn't care about the business anymore. As far as the industry, it just didn't appeal to me. But and finally in 2017, same year, I broke free and just went for it. What advice would you give to listeners that are in corporate America, making a good living, have a nice house, kids' college fund is saved for, they're saving for it, but they're miserable. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough scenario, and you and I have both been there. And I'm really careful how I address this topic because I'm not naive enough to think that um, everyone has put themselves in the same position that they can just say, "I'm out." In other words, we have commitments, we have bills, we have things we must do, and for most of us, as our income rises, so do our commitments. So if you find yourself in that position, you're wondering, is there a better way? I'm here to tell you the answer is yes, there is a better way, but it ain't easy. And you might not even be in the right environment for that better way to be embraced. So you got to weigh, you have to weigh the scenario in front of you. Is keeping my head down, kind of slogging along the way that you and I did for a couple decades plus, is that the be all end all for us? And if the answer is yes, I got nothing but love for you. I get it. But I will also tell you, and I go back to, and I would love your take on this, Roger. When I first entered the workplace, I brought a tremendous amount of optimism and eagerness. Dude, I wanted to do big things. I wanted to be somebody in the corporate world. It was something I've always wanted to do. I lost that though, and that was replaced with apathy. And my sense is now that I've traveled so much and spoken about the book so often, I'm not alone in that loss, losing the energy, the eagerness, the optimism. If you're in that scenario and you're questioning, is there something bigger for you? Am I missing out on fulfillment? Do I have a chance to have a greater contribution to this planet and those around me? It starts with a choice, and that choice usually requires us to make some sacrifices. You may have to take 1 or 2 steps backward before making 3 or 4 steps forward, but it all starts with a choice. You don't have to accept the environment you're in. You may not be able to change it, but you can either get along with it. And again, nothing but love for you because of your commitments. I get that. But on the other side of that challenge of going to do something different, maybe starting your own business, maybe going to a new firm that has, maybe something a little more to offer, will allow you to be the genuine and authentic you, the one that you brought to the workplace when you first entered the workplace. It's out there. You just got to find it. And you may swing a few times and miss a few times, but it's out there. But it all starts with that choice.
Yeah, yeah. I I think when it granulized for me is when I made a switch from one firm to another,
Yeah.
expecting it to be, well, but this is a different ownership group. It's a different modality within healthcare that I was in pharma. And then I realized like day two, oh my gosh, it's the same exact
Took that long,
job,
huh?
right? Same job with different problems. But
Yeah.
and then I just realized, okay, this cycle is going to rinse and repeat. And I watched so many of my former colleagues, I'll see it on LinkedIn, celebrating a new position at such and such. I'm thinking, I know why you switched because you're looking for it, but it probably not going to, you may, but you probably won't find it there because
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Where do
No
you
doubt.
see, Kyle, if you could say that, hey, there's one of the bigger, there's, many misconceptions, but what is one of the bigger misconceptions that leaders have when it comes to specifically team building to create organizational success? So if we focus on team building, where do you see, because, I think what you've said earlier without saying it is, there's a lack of real genuine teamwork of real, I got your back. We're all in this together in the corporate environment, especially the bigger the company. Um, where do you see the misconception around the leaders have around team building?
I think it's the well, I'll put it this way. In my mind, the biggest travesty inside the business world is this lack of humanity that has its surfaces the moment we step into the workplace, whether it's virtual, we're on a Zoom call, working from home, or whether we step into a brick and mortar location. The human characteristics that we live with every single day. We're wired to be communal. We're wired to help one another. We're wired to receive help. But over time, as industry has evolved, as leadership has evolved, as humans have evolved, we've been conditioned to lose that bit of humanity. Not entirely. I'm not here to say that leaders don't care, but what has happened, and I'm Exhibit A. We focus more. We being leaders, we focus more on our own accolades, our own growth, our own success measurements, whatever those are. And in my case, and I think it's not uncommon, it's at the peril of those around us. So we think we step into the workplace, I'm going to put myself in a position to get promoted, take on more, and do more, that which some mistake or conflate with having to do less. And that could be the scenario, right? You get this authoritative title and you're allowed to just say, because I said so, and you can deliver results. You can't sustain those results. But the biggest mistake is assuming that as I grow, I have less responsibility and I can just tell people to do things. When our approach should be the exact opposite. As I grow and take on more and do more, that means I have an opportunity to impact more people, to have a greater impact on those around me. And if we think the growth is just about paychecks and bigger roles and bigger responsibilities, larger teams, you might achieve those. But when you say the bigger the role, the more I take on, the bigger the team, the greater the impact I can have, enabling those around me to grow, to take on more, to do bigger things, to help them on their quote unquote journey, that's where the value is. But we lose this humanity, and it becomes almost a dog eat dog mentality that for someone to win, someone else must lose. And I subscribed to that for a couple of decades. I don't any longer. And I will tell you, the results come so much more easily when our time and energy is invested in people instead of the metrics will come. So I think if you enter that scenario thinking life gets easier, the job gets easier as you take on more because you've got an army of people around you, or perhaps you're in an organization that gives you all the resources you need. Well, that just means you have to place an even greater emphasis on those around you, because all of the hard skills, the technology, those things are in place. That's when we have to go even deeper on the people.
Yeah. I have shared with so many first-time leaders that, you said it, Kyle, like the KPIs are important. You have to measure that. There has to be performance. But the more you yell about the KPIs or break apart the KPI, I've really never been in a meeting that, let's break apart this KPI and why it's going wrong. Okay, it still comes back down to a human being has to change behavior to affect that KPI. And I've told so many young leaders that you're not managing John Doe. You're managing John Doe, his wife, his kids, his golf buddies, the time that he was 17 and Samantha told him no to go to the senior prom, and he's still carrying that in his head. And like you're managing all that, the time his dad said, he wasn't good enough. And that is who you're managing. Don't think you're managing John at work. He's got all of that. And everybody says, hey, leave your bag of hammers at the front door. So much easier said than done. It's not impossible. And what I'm hearing you say is the KPIs are important. They have to be, but a human being still has to execute to create those KPIs.
Absolutely true. I think it works on both sides of the coin. So when we look at John, the employee, we look at him as a worker, someone who is a means to an end for us to deliver for our team, for the company in which we sit. On the other side of that coin is this group that is nameless, is faceless, but we talk about them all the time. It's leadership or management, but those are real people as well.
Yeah.
And I think so many times, especially in bigger organizations, leaders get lumped into this group and they can hide inside that group and say, well, leadership won't allow us to take this approach, or management is not okay with us going this direction. When I think that's a cop-out when we should say that person's name, who that person is, because ultimately the buck stops with somebody. There was a story, it's been a few months ago now, where there's actually, it's very, very, very appropriate to share the story with you. You probably heard this. The Charlotte, I think it was the Hornets. Who was, I may get the team wrong, but it was a Charlotte-based team. They gave away a PlayStation 5 at halftime. You remember this? Did you hear about this story?
I'm trying to knock the cobwebs off of it. I know what you're talking about. Go ahead, please.
So they gave this PS5 out, right? And this kid comes out onto the court. They have this massive ovation. The kid is, beaming with excitement. He walks off the court with this PS5. A couple of days later, it's in the news. The team took the PlayStation back. So it was all for show. And the team was drugged through the coals. Like, there was lots of negative social media backlash about, how do you deceive a kid and all these things. And it's easy to say the team or this company did that. No, there was a person, somebody somewhere in the organization said, hey, make sure you get that back after we give it to them. That wasn't leadership. That wasn't management. That was a human being.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's an injustice, and it's a cop out to say, I have this team member who I'm trying to get more work out of. It's actually a human being with feelings, emotions, and baggage like all of us have. Likewise, it's a cop out, and it's an injustice to say management or leadership isn't doing something, because they're always just people.
Yeah. Yeah. This segment is sponsored by Rockbox Fitness Franchising. Take control of your destiny and join the boutique fitness revolution with Rockbox Fitness. If you're ready to make a real impact in your community and own your own business that empowers people to achieve their best life, then Rockbox is the opportunity you've been looking for. They provide comprehensive support from site selection, upfit, training, and turnkey marketing, so you can open your studio with confidence and a strong recurring revenue member base. Visit rockboxfitness.com and click on franchise opportunities to learn more about this exciting venture in the fast-growing boutique fitness industry. It's time to turn your passion for fitness and for business into a thriving venture. When I was reading Begin With We, you've written it. I read it. It's fine. I guess you receive it how you read it, right? And where you're at personally with every book.
Sure.
So what I was picking up from it was how to apply a lot of your lessons to the younger generation, which we're referring to as Gen Z now. I think Gen Alpha's coming up behind them, but Gen Z, who a lot of us have in our companies and our workforce, because you can't just say, like when you and I were growing up, hey, jump. Okay, how high? And if I do, what do I get for it? Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm done. Don't even have to ask me again. Whereas with Gen Z, it's like, well, why should I jump? And what will this do to the world? And I'm being facetious, but very different. Where the 10 We's are about culture, about mission, about purpose. A lot of purpose I read in your book. With purpose, you can create passion. So my question that's in all that verbiage is, there's a lot of people who are, I'm almost 55, who are listening to this show that are, between 40 and 55, that are managing this generation. And we grew up without the ability for work-life. Let me rephrase that. Without the ability to voice our concern for work-life balance. You'd be
That's
ostracized.
Right.
You could be demoted, fired, if like, well, I want to go to this dinner party instead of doing this project tonight. This generation, Z, won't stand for that. And they're the majority of our new workforce. So where does employee well-being balance against the company's got to make money or none of us have jobs? Like, I just love your professional opinion on that based on the work you've done.
Well, so the premise of your question, I could not agree more with. I mean, it's a different time. And the paradigm that the workforce brings today is wildly different than the way you and I grew up. I'll be 50 in a couple of months, so I think it's safe to say we grew up in the same era. And you're also right about my intention with the 10 We's. I found most organizations do a decent, if not better than decent job bringing talent into the organization. Hey, here's how you do the job. Here's the repository of all of our policies and procedures. Here's the checklist, for your role. I think we do an okay job by and large teaching folks how to do the X's and O's of their job. Where most organizations and most leaders, including myself, have fallen short is saying, here are the expectations and how we would prefer you to behave inside of this team. setting an expectation and list of standards. Because a principle, by the way, these are 10 principles. By definition, a principle is a system for foundational beliefs. It's kind of the things that we subscribe and hold true. And I've found if we get a group of people, I don't care if it's the Boy Scouts, the bowling team, the chess team, or a team inside of a workplace, if we get a group of humans to align around a series of principles, like we do the right thing, we lead by example, we take action, we say what we're going to do, and then we do it, you are much better positioned for great results. You're much better positioned for tighter bonds. And ultimately, from that becomes this work-life scenario that most people can live with. Because we recognize we all bring baggage. We recognize that while you're down, it's my responsibility as your teammate, as a human, to pick you up. So I don't know that I would say it's directly focused at a work-life balance, but I would say if these principles are adopted and subscribed to, and I don't want to sound too too self-grandizing. What's the word? I don't want to be too self-grandizing here, because I don't really care, frankly, if you use the 10 weeks. But what I do care is you establish your leadership principles, the non-negotiables, and you evangelize them and communicate them and share with them and interact with them and lean into them, especially in times of adversity. When we go back upstream and say, here's who we are, here's how we expect our behavior to be, how we treat one another behind the curtains. I'm not even talking about how we treat those we serve externally yet, because if we're high functioning behind the curtain, the odds of us delivering excellence externally are exponentially increased.
Yep.
And with that comes this environment, this vibe, this what I call culture of excellence, where we care a hell of a lot about each other, which only helps the results become what they are. And if we face adversity, we're going to rally shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm to take that adversity on.
So again, I want to just rewind the tape just a hair to where you said, if your environment, like 2 points that you said, is your environment ripe for you to make these changes? Is your environment right? I want you to share your guidance and advice, your expertise with listeners on if they're in a workplace, whether it's 100-person company or 100,000 people in a company, if the culture isn't right, but they want it to be different, what can they do? Or should they just go find another place to work?
So I'm not the guy to stand here and tell you that you're going to drive massive change alone, especially the bigger the organization. We talked about it before we press record. I mean, there are environments that are just too toxic. The dysfunction runs too deep, and it's more than one person can take on. So if you're evaluating whether or not this is a scenario in which you can thrive, only you can answer that question. Now, if you're in a position of what I say authority, and I say a position of authority because there's a big difference between a boss and a leader. But if you have direct reports, it's an obligation of you to create an environment for that team, not necessarily with, but perhaps in spite of all the noise around you, including maybe a boss that doesn't recognize you for the value that you bring. It's just a decision you have to make when you're promoted or put into a position where you're leading others. A lot of times, and I hate to say it this way, what's happening around you doesn't matter, because now you are in charge, not of people, but you're in charge of making sure that this team delivers excellence, or else you wouldn't have been placed in the role. So I put it this way. If I recognize that my little team has an opportunity to be higher functioning, take care of one another, and subscribe to a series of beliefs that might unite us, I need to run that race. It is incumbent upon me, and it comes with the territory of being a leader. If you've gone that route and you feel as if you're continually, say, running uphill with a parachute on, and you're not able to be your best, you're not finding fulfillment, you're not feeling valued, that tough decision might be a little easier for some. But at the end of the day, it's scenario driven. I will just tell you from experience, and I think you would second this, on the other side of that really scary proposition is an opportunity to find a level of fulfillment and impact that you probably weren't going to find in the role that you're in today. But again, it's situational. And I mentioned it earlier. If you got commitments and things that are keeping you connected to that role, that company, I get it. But the last thing you should do, even in that environment, is just turn a blind eye, keep your head down, and do this lather, rinse, repeat thing. You're not doing anybody any favors, especially yourself.
Yeah. So let's flip the script to companies that do this well, or leaders not bosses, leaders who do this well. You've worked with a lot of companies, done a lot of research, obviously written about it. What would you say is the common thread that runs through great leadership? When you see it across different organizations, different industries, there's still a common thread. What would that be?
Yeah, I don't know that I've identified a single thread. There are characteristics or traits that are consistent from one company to the next. And it almost always includes a level of empathy, understanding that, my work is not my identity, that folks around me, not just those that I interact with every day, but essentially everyone in the organization, everyone in the world, we all bring baggage. And the highest of high functioning teams and organizations understand that our work is not our identity. And that wasn't the case for many, many years because work was my identity for a couple of decades. When we recognize the level of empathy that we give almost always results in a higher level of loyalty and commitment to our cause and our mission. We start to lead a little differently. We approach things differently. So I think empathy is a big one, but also communication, right? So just sending a memo, sending an email, telling somebody what to do, that's managing processes. That's not managing people. And by the way, I'm convinced nobody wants to be managed. We want to be led.
Yeah. Yep. Oh,
So a healthy dose of empathy with really effective communication, whether it be, and you can pick the medium, right? It could be town halls, it could be regular one-on-ones, a robust staff meeting schedule, whatever works for you. But understand that just because you said it doesn't make it reality. People don't necessarily hear what you intended. So I think we got to communicate and then communicate and then communicate over and over again. And all of this, Rogers, under the umbrella of a choice. Look, I don't wake up every morning, spring out of bed and run to the office because I'm ready to take on the world. I don't think anybody does. I think there are exceptions. And, from time to time, we have these ebbs and flows. But when you sign up to be in a position where you're leading others, it's one of those gut check things. It's like when the waters get rough, I find myself saying, this is what I signed up for. It's not always going to be fun. It's not always rainbows and unicorns. I need to dig in and get through this. And I think that's a common thread as well, as folks in really high functioning teams understand that this is a long race. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And the more I invest in those around me in terms of the energy I give to them, the care I give to them, simple things like, do you have a good weekend? Showing that level of humanity and relatability is incredibly important. And I would sum all of this up with, in my mind, the most excellent of excellent teams, the highest of high performers, the most high functioning teams. They recognize that members of the team are actually human beings,
yeah.
not a means to an end.
What I heard between the lines there is it builds trust. It builds trust when you're empathetic, and trust, you talk about in your book, is one of the core ideologies of being a great leader and building a high functioning team.
But
again, I want to stay in go ahead, please.
Well, I was just going to add to that. But even just saying trust is kind of a nebular term because, how do we arrive at trust?
Yeah.
I can tell you, hey, Roger, you should trust me. You hear me, but you're not going to, you're going to watch me. You're going to observe my actions. Are my actions aligning with my words? And I boiled it down to this, and this is what I live by every single day. And it's kind of what I preach. If you want trust is found via two means. I think authenticity and relatability equals trust. When I'm authentic and that I'm saying what I mean and I mean what I say, good, bad, or otherwise, I'm going to give it to you like it is. You may not like what I have to say, but you'll know it'll be delivered with some type of diplomacy, but also you'll know it's exactly how I feel. There's no ulterior motives. You're not questioning, you're not reading between the lines to say, why he said this, but I meant that. Authenticity is critical. Relatability is the part I mentioned earlier, but to bring it home, I recognize you have things going on outside of work. Maybe you have a sick child or an ailing parent. Maybe you're going through some type of health issue yourself. For me to expect you to be the best and be your same high output type of individual, that's naive. It's unrealistic. So when I can marry my authenticity with the fact that I can relate with the struggles that you're going through, that you're not always going to be at 100%, this level of trust starts to form, and it's really almost impenetrable because they recognize, again, you care about me as a person, not what I can do for you on this team.
Yeah. I think I've shared with more young leaders and parents, young parents, having two grown children now, is just a simple phrase. And you've heard this, your actions speak so loudly, they can't hear what you're saying. because we always, we say this, we say that, but they're watching. They're
They
always,
are
they
watching.
being your team, they being your colleagues, they being your supervisors, and certainly they being your kids. They're watching. They're figuring this out by watching you, not by listening to what you're saying.
So true.
Yeah, yeah. When you wrote, I'm holding up again here, his great book, bestseller, by the way, Begin with We. Subtitle is 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. Kyle, when you sat down to write this, and then you finish this book, and writing a book is not an easy thing. You finish this book, it's going to publication. It goes out into the world. What do you hope the reader leaves with? They set the book down, and what do you hope that they leave with as an
Yeah.
author?
Roger, you reminded me the day the manuscript was finished. And you mentioned it's hard. Writing a book is not fun. It's not a good time. And when I made the decision to write it, I didn't tell anybody for a while, maybe a month or so. And I finally told my wife because I was worried of this imposter syndrome thing that I struggle with. I was worried, who's going to read a book from you? I had a friend tell me that, by the way, who's going to read a book from you? I remember saying vividly, if I sell 1,000 copies of this book, I'll be over the moon. It was kind of a passion project. Fast forward a couple of years later, 30-ish thousand copies sold. It's, and I don't say that as a braggadocious type thing. I say that because there's a movement that's starting, and it's been underway for, I would say, maybe the last 6 or 8 months, because our sales continue to climb month over month. And my only hope is that the reader, at any point during the book or when they finish the book, they agree with me that there is a better way. Now, it's not easy, right? It's so many things in life. We know how to get there. We know how to lose weight. Every one of us on the planet knows how to lose weight. We know what it takes. Maybe we got to increase calories burned, reduce calories intaken. We know what's required to learn how to play the guitar. Let's get lessons or get on YouTube or figure it out. All simple, but not easy. So when you set the book down, you think, man, there really is a better way. Recognize that better way is going to require more work from you. It gets harder before it gets easier. Now, once the hard part starts to kind of mellow a bit, now we're finding fulfillment, we're finding impact, and we're actually finding fun and bonds that we never experienced before. So it's a long-winded way of saying there is a better way. It requires a choice and it requires more work initially. But ultimately, that investment reaps a payback that is just outsized compared to anything I experienced in the first 2 decades, 2 dozen years, something like that for me.
Yeah, yeah. To everyone listening, I can tell you, I've read the book, and
Thank you for that.
What of course, what Kyle just shared with you is you have to put his principles into action. Even if you pick 3 of the 10 W's, but you go all in on those, you will see a marked change in your business or your relationships. There's so much of this is applicable,
So
I believe,
true.
to personal relationships. But you have to act on it. And hey, if information solved it, we'd all be on Google and we'd all be rich and thin, right? If it were just information, right?
Handsome,
It's
rich, and
execution.
yeah, you got it. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love asking. I always start to head towards the finish line here with the same 3 questions, and the first one is really applicable because we're just talking about your book. I'm an avid reader. It's funny, and one thing that Kyle does throughout the book is he quotes like really inspirational, John Wooden, Tom Brady. There's an Albert Einstein quote in here. As I was getting ready to re-prep for this interview and flipping through it because I got it, it's dog-eared in a couple spaces, and your Albert Einstein quote is great. I'm reading his biography by Walter Isaacson right
Oh,
now.
how is that? I love Isaacson.
Isaacson's great. I've done, of course, Steve Jobs.
Yep.
I'd already read an Elon Musk book, so I haven't read that one. But then I read Benjamin Franklin, which was unbelievable.
Really?
Like, it was so cool. And that's what made me buy this Einstein one. The Einstein one's great, except it is heavy theory, and he's trying to explain what his theories are too. So I'm trying to stick with it, but it's not light reading. I can tell you that. But I love the quotes in there, which made me realize, obviously, you're well read, or you wouldn't have those quotes. What is a book, Kyle, that you read? It could have been 25 years ago. It could have been last week. That when you set it down, it had a profound impact on you. and you did actually change the way you did something because of the book?
My answer might surprise you.
Yeah.
The Power of Now by
Okay.
Eckhart Tolle. You
Yeah.
familiar with that book?
Yeah. Yeah. Eckhart,
Massively
yeah.
influential to me, man. And for those of your audience that may not be familiar with it, admittedly, it can come across a little woo-woo and a little kind of new age or spiritual. But what I took from it, and I think that's the beauty of books, right? We can all take different things from it. It's music as well. We hear one thing, but we all take in something different. Um, the Power of Now and its emphasis on the role the ego plays in all things of our life was really, really impactful to me in that I realized, and this was the error of my ways those first 2 decades that I touched on earlier, that my ego was standing in the way of really being an impactful leader, but also an impactful human. And our relationship with our ego inside the workplace, I think for many of us is very different than outside of the workplace. I had to be right. I had to have all the right answers. I needed to be the best dressed, smartest guy in the room, have the most expansive vocabulary, all things that are A, unnecessary to be an impactful leader, but B, I think with those things in mind, we only have so much room up here and we lose sight and focus on the things that really matter. So Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, and its focus on the role the ego plays has been nothing short of profound for me. And it's something that I would encourage just about anybody to pick up. And by the way, I picked for the first time when I picked it up, I put it back down and didn't go back to it for a year. So I thought this is kind of new age hippie stuff. That's not for me. But then I started to apply my life scenarios to the book instead of having the book kind of be the guide. I was like, well, what does this mean to me? And the role the ego played was the outcome for me that it changed my life and it changed how I lead.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife actually turned me on to
Did
his
you like
works,
it?
and
You can be honest. Was it a good
yeah,
book for
yeah,
you? Yeah.
absolutely. It is. It's funny because my wife is more woo woo in that way, to use your term, and so I
Yeah.
do think you have to go into that book. He has a lot of writings too, just essays and
Mhm.
stuff, but you have to go into that with a mind of no judgment,
That's
just
right.
reception, right? No
That's right.
judgment, just
Well
receive the
said.
message.
Yep.
It's funny. I just reread The Alchemist for the second time after, like, I don't know how many years. And I know the first time I read that, I thought, this is a dumb story. Like, this is just a dumb story about a guy in the desert, right? And then when I reread it, literally 2, 3 months ago, as you know, the teacher appears when the student is ready. And that's why
That's
I'm a
right.
huge fan of going back and rereading these books. Like, I promise you, if you were to reread The Power of Now today, you would get a different lesson from it, or different lessons than you did
No
the first time
question.
you read it, because
No doubt. No
you're
doubt.
never the same person, and you're always, hopefully always growing, or you have different challenges in your life, and then all of a sudden that lesson
It's
shines
applicable.
bright.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Hey
Like
man,
how, yeah,
did you read Meditations?
I did. Marcus Aurelius. I've read
Yes.
2 different versions of the first one. I picked the wrong one, and my son, who's 21 now, he was 18 when he came home to see it, and he saw it, and he goes, "Hey, Dad, that's not the right one." Because he goes, what do you think? I said, "I'm about a third of the way through, but this is it's brutal." He goes, "It's
Okay.
because you're reading like the actual thing." He goes, "Read this one." I forgot the author. That's the
Probably Hayes. Probably Gregory
yeah,
Hayes.
yeah. That's the better interpretations, more our common era,
Yes.
applications. And I love it. Absolutely
Yes.
love it. Yeah.
Okay,
So
cool. That was
it's
a big
actually on
one
my
for me as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's on my nightstand. It's on my nightstand
Love
because
it.
it's one of
Oh,
those that
really?
you can pick it up and you can read 4 pages and put it down. You don't have to
That's
read it like
exactly right.
a
Yeah,
novel.
man, I
Yeah.
love that book. I'm glad you
Yeah.
read it as well.
Yeah. 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 It took me 2 tries to get the right book, but finally when I got the right version, it was
Yeah,
great.
I needed the dumb guy version.
Yeah,
I needed, like, Meditations for Idiots, and
that's
with respect, I think that's the Hayes version, but it's just written in common language
exactly.
for
Exactly.
us,
Yep.
and for
Yeah.
me anyway. Yeah.
All right, second question of these 3 is, you've had this pivot in your life. You're now doing, this amazing work that's fulfilling and helping organizations, and you're living this rich life. And we all know how this movie ends. All of us kind of end the same way. And so let's say we fast forward to the end of your life, which is hopefully many, many decades from now, but we're at your funeral and a loved one is reading your eulogy, but he or she is only allowed 3 words to choose to describe you. Now, they don't have to make a sentence like, "He was great." It doesn't have to be that. It can just be 3 descriptors. What 3 words do you hope that because of the life you've lived and the impact you've had on others, what 3 words do you hope they choose that would best describe you, the way you hope to be remembered?
That's an easy one for me, actually.
Okay, good.
Loyal, caring, empathetic.
Love it. Love it. That's the wrong answer, but no, I'm just kidding. There's no wrong, there's no wrong answer.
As you're asking the question, I'm playing through. I think loyalty. My friends know. My friends and my wife and my, anyone in my circle knows. I'll drop off this podcast right now and go help them.
Yeah.
What's needed, because I know they would do the same for me. I have a very small circle of friends, and it's something we take great pride in. And I don't think you can be that way without care.
Yeah.
I changed a tire for a stranger about a month ago. It was a pregnant woman on the side of the road, right? No one was stopping to help her. I care enough about someone else's experience. That's someone's mother or soon to be mother. It's someone's daughter, sister, whatever. She needed help, right? And then empathy. I didn't come from a whole lot. I came from middle class at best. I've worked for every single dollar that I've ever made. Nothing was handed to me. So I understand those that come from, and I'm a lucky guy now. I'm in a different position today, obviously, but I'm empathetic and understand, what it takes to get from where I was to where I am. And not everybody has the same opportunities or avenues to pursue that I had. But I recognize, the world is a very complex place, and, there are a lot of haves and have-nots, and I can, try to empathize with the entire spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm just literally joking. I don't think I've ever
I know that, man.
razzed with anybody with that, but because you were so concrete in your answer. I love that. Usually people will sit here and think about them. I love that you're that on purpose.
Well, I think about legacy a lot, man. And maybe it's because, as I mentioned, I'll be 50 in a couple of months. Maybe it's because of that big birthday around the corner. But I think about what people would read at my funeral. As morbid as that might sound, I really do think about that. And I always end that thought process with saying, I want those that would wonder what I would say at their funeral, I want them to know now.
Yeah.
So I don't save words. If I appreciate you, I tell you I appreciate you. If I'm disappointed, I tell you. If you've inspired me, I tell you. And I just think that why wait for the funeral to tell somebody what they meant to you? So it's part of why I think about it so often.
Yeah. And maybe you've done this. I went through an exercise where for a development opportunity where I wrote my eulogy, like a full 2-page
You wrote your
eulogy.
own?
Wrote my own.
No,
Fast
heard of this. Tell me more.
Oh, I'm telling you, brother. It's and I did this. It was a Donald Miller. He's a story brand author and big business coach guy. But one of his modules is write your own eulogy. And how old are you? How old do you think you'll live to be? So, okay, then what's the delta? 30, 40 years, whatever it may be. And then write your eulogy in depth, in detail, the impact that you had on others, the impact, what they're going to say about you, but you have to write it in third person because they're talking about you. And I can tell you, I can tell you where I was when I wrote it, because I just dropped the pen when I was done. And I think it's better to write it. I think it tells you to write it longhand versus typing it because you're more connected to it.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, I dropped that pen and realized I need to get busy getting busy, because I think I'm going to get a lot of that, but not all of that. And I owe it to my loved ones, my team, my family, my future grandchildren, all that, to live up to this eulogy. And what it did for me, Kyle, is it gave me clarity instantaneously. And am I living up to it every day? Hell no. But it reminds me to go back and read it and go, okay, I'm doing pretty good in that. Actually, that I need some improvement on. That I got to keep, I need to refocus more on that. But it just, when you write it, it brings clarity to most of this crap we worry about is just nonsense. It's just nonsense. But what you get in your eulogy is, okay, that is the stuff that matters. So that's where I should spend my time.
You find yourself going back to it?
I do. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yep. And I've even, because my business goals have changed, because you incorporate, what you've achieved as a professional, what you've achieved as a human, what you've achieved in your family, and your impact in the world. And so I've changed it because of my profession has changed. But yeah, it's like just like your goals. You go back and reread your goals, and it
Sure.
makes it reinforces those. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by ThriveMore Autopilot. You know, the latest data shows a large amount of small to mid-sized business owners are living paycheck to paycheck, and that is not why you started a business in the first place. We all start businesses to create the freedom in our lives that we want and to give us options. But to do that, you need more leads, and you need to turn those prospects into long-term paying customers. Well, the solution is ThriveMore Autopilot. ThriveMore Autopilot is the turnkey solution to take the stress and the hard work out of new customer acquisition, which is the lifeblood of any small business. ThriveMore Autopilot works on your behalf to generate a waterfall of new leads through various channels, to nurture those leads with proprietary AI solutions that mimic human interaction, to sell memberships and help you increase your monthly recurring revenue, and they even provide you coaching and your team coaching on the most effective sales techniques and give you a community of other like-minded business owners. ThriveMore Autopilot is how you scale your business without stress and the relentless phone calls and texts and reach outs to the prospects to get them to show up for that first appointment or to show up to that call. So learn how ThriveMore Autopilot can help you win big by going to thrivemore.ai. That's thrivemore.ai. ThriveMore Autopilot, the strategic partner for small to mid-sized business owners to help you scale and live the life of your dreams. And then second to last question, because I definitely want people to find out where they can find you, follow you, be part of your journey. But the second to last question would be, if I give you a magic wand, and I'm looking forward to your answer on this. And again, there's no wrong answer. If I give you a magic wand, Kyle, and you can wave that magic wand tonight and make one change to the world, the way the world operates, the way people are, whatever.
Yeah.
But you get this magic wand, you just wave it, and wham, we wake up in the morning. How is the world different for the listeners? How is it different for me and you? How is the world different according to Kyle?
Yeah, but this is also an easy one for me because it's something I think about a lot. I think most of the strife in the world today, and there's a lot of it, the noise, the toxicity, you turn on any news outlet and you see just really, really horrible shit.
Yeah.
I want us to be able to disagree more. Disagree in a healthy, diplomatic way. There are certainly instances, more often than not actually, where we can have two truths. There doesn't necessarily have to be, completely conflicting sides to every opinion. And even if there is, and politics comes to mind because it's so kind of hotly contested and inflammatory now, like you can have the absolute opposite position from me on any number of topics, but I would like to think we could still have an open dialogue about it. I may not leave convinced on your point, and likewise you of mine, but I'd like to think I learned a little bit, and it might even strengthen my position. But we got to be open to it, man. We have to be. And most of all, that being open requires us to not vilify the person or think less of them because they don't subscribe to the same ideology or philosophies or things that we do. It's quite all right. I go back to this, don't tread on me. I don't care about your orientation for this or your affiliation with that, unless you're doing harm to others. But if it is something that you're drawn to, you're passionate about, and it's authentic to you, and I disagree vehemently, so
Yep.
that doesn't mean I remember it's been a long time ago. I remember George Bush the second. That's is he W? Yeah, the second was W, right?
W. Yep.
Attended a baseball game, and in his suite was sitting next to Ellen DeGeneres, obviously a very liberal personality, and there was so much hate on the internet about how could you sit and enjoy a game. What do you mean, man? That's a human, and we have more in common than you might expect. Namely, the love of this baseball team that we're watching. And I just think putting people in categories and saying, if you're in that category and you cannot agree with this other group or this people in this category, I think it's nonsense. And it shuts down growth, learning opportunities. Anyway, man, I know it's a long answer, but I wish we could disagree in a more healthy fashion and not hate and vilify someone because they sit on another side of a scenario than we do.
Yeah. This is not mine, but I was going through a 12-month leadership program at an academy just recently. graduated, and one of my colleagues in there, one of my cohort colleagues, um, incredibly wealthy guy of Indian heritage and lives in Texas. But he said he had a spiritual teacher that this visual, just every day that I disagree with something, I try to remember this visual.
Okay.
And the spiritual teacher taught him, because he was very black and white, and he and his brother would always argue because they're in business together. And the Indian culture has very strong opinions on things, and like we all do. And then, of course, then they have the hierarchy that's even more in place from siblings than we do in America. But the spiritual teacher really helped him understand the truth is like a sphere. It's a sphere that you hold out in front of you at arm's length. The closest you can get to it is arm's length.
Okay.
And that sphere, that perfect sphere, is half of it is painted, let's just say red. The other half is painted white. So at any point when you're looking at the truth, all you can ever see of it is most you could ever see is half. And maybe the way you're looking at the truth, it's all white. Maybe the way they're looking at the truth, it's all red. Now, if you get to the side, you may see half red and half white. That doesn't mean that you see the whole truth, because on the other side, we don't know what the other side is, right? We just don't know.
Yeah.
We know we happen to know it's red and white in this case, but we don't know. If you get underneath it, you see a different side of that red and that white, but you can never see the whole truth. And if you go through your life accepting, hey, they've got a really strong opinion, I cannot see their side of the sphere. They can help me see it, and I can work to see it, and maybe I will get a glimpse of it. But when I get a glimpse of that, I won't see the other bazillion combinations of looking at this sphere to see the whole truth at one time. And man, when you keep that visual, I'm a visual learner, so that really appealed to me. Yeah, that's okay. Maybe nobody's wrong here. We're just looking at this in a very different perspective. We're looking at this sphere, at the truth, at a very different perspective. And so nobody's right or wrong.
Yeah. What makes it complex in today's world is we have a hard time aligning on what's true.
Yeah.
What was the expression we learned? It's been 4 or 6 years ago now, maybe even longer. Alternative facts. That was a new term that was introduced by politicians, press person many years ago. Facts are facts. We can interpret them differently, but and by the way, I think that's rooted in our inability to disagree. It's like, I'm going to disagree even if I have to make stuff up, because I'm so anchored in this position that I'm in that I have to support it, or else it's a shot to my being, or it's a discredit to my intellect. So I just feel like what a world we would be in if you and I were to sit down for coffee and you tell me all the things that you and I can't align on a single thing. We shake hands and walk away. See you next week for coffee.
Yeah.
I just think it'd be a beautiful place to be. And it's, you're not a villain if I disagree with you, and vice versa.
Amen. Amen. Most important.
What was by the way, I have to ask because you teased it. What is your answer
on
this question? Wave the wand.
I'll wave the wand. Mine people would seek to understand and wouldn't even try to be understood. They would just seek to understand. Because if you're curious, I stole this from Tony Robbins. 2 things can't be in your life if you're curious and you have gratitude: fear and anger.
Amen.
And what drives so many wars and disagreements and fights and all the stuff we read in the news is fear and anger. It's fear and anger. I mean, greed, of course, you could put in there, but greed is, I fear I won't have what I want, or I'm going to lose what I have. And so I think if we could eliminate the need to, I want you to understand my point. I mean, I do love debate, so I guess that's a little extreme, but I want people to really seek to understand the other point of view. And buddy, I'm a work in progress on that. I am great right up to the point that I get tired, and then I hit and then it's like, all right, I don't have time to sit here and try to find the other point of view. But that's my goal for myself. And of course, I'm projecting that into this answer, is that we seek to understand without judgment, because usually we seek to understand so I can put you in a box. I need to be able, I know how to operate fasting to put you in a box so I can keep moving with my life, versus I just want to understand you.
And by the way, I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it: understand does not mean agree.
Yeah,
we don't have to agree.
Yeah,
I love that question. Thank you for sharing your answer too.
You betcha. All right, most important question, Kyle: where can people follow you, get in contact with you, just be part of your journey? Because we'll put that in the show notes.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity. So thank you for allowing me to say so. I'm on essentially every social media platform. The same handle. It's at Kyle McDowell Inc. My website is kylemcdowellinc.com. The book is Begin with We. I think most people have found the best deal and the quickest way to get the book is through Amazon, but it's available wherever books are sold, Barnes and Noble, Target, those places. And I'm grateful for the chance to share those social media handles. Not, dude, I'm not chasing followers. I'm not chasing all the vanity metrics. I use that as a mechanism, as an engine to interact with those that either found some value in the book, think the book is trash, and they want to understand why I'm coming from the angle or give the approach that I give, which is great. Back to the comment or conversation we just had. And I use it as a sounding board as well. So I've accumulated this group of, I think, like-minded people. And this is the momentum we talked about earlier. And social media is a great tool for allowing me to interact with folks. And I am proud to say that every single, as long as it's not nonsense, every single direct message or email that I get, I respond to complete strangers to try to help them along their path. I feel like I'd be a hypocrite otherwise. So, those are again the best ways to reach me.
Love it. Love it. Well, we will put all that in the show notes. And I know after today's conversation, people are going to want to check it out, check out the book, and then of course follow you, be part of everything that you do. Kyle, I've just thoroughly enjoyed this, man. Thank you so much for the time and especially for the candor. Just, you're an open book and the world needs more of that. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Roger.
You betcha. For the rest of you listening, remember, set your intentions for the day and strive to thrive. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.